First, we're going to connect to the core switch via its console port, and we're going to configure this interface, gigabit Ethernet 02, before we move on to configuring the user access switch. Let's move into enable mode. The password configured is level up, and then we're going to configure the interface. Let's configure it to be a trunk port that uses .1Q encapsulation. But first, we'll shut it down to ensure no issues or problems occur as we configure the user access switch, and we'll come back and bring this back up later on. Switch port, trunk, encapsulation, .1Q. Switch port mode trunk, and we'll give it a meaningful description to user access -2, and then we'll come back to this a little later. Now let's power up the user access switch. So we'll connect to its console port. Need to give it a moment whilst it completes the boot process. Then once it's up, we're going to first configure this port, gigabit Ethernet 01, configure it as a .1Q trunk. Then we'll move on and configure the layer 2 VLAN details. So enable, configure terminal. First we'll give it a host name and a domain name. And a domain name, IP domain name, myvirl.lab. And though we're not using VTP, I will set the VTP mode to transparent and configure it with a VTP domain name that's shared throughout the topology. myvirl.lab. There we're going to go ahead and configure the interface. Interface GI0/1, switch port, trunk, encapsulation .1Q, switch port, mode trunk, and we'll give it a meaningful name description to core-1. Now we have that configured, we can now configure the layer 2 VLANs that are needed throughout the network, or that have been configured throughout the network. Then we'll go ahead and configure the management VLAN IP addressing. Interface VLAN 10. And we'll say IP address 10.10.10.5 with a 24-bit subnet mask. We'll give it a description of mgmt-VLAN, and we shall enable it. finally, to complete the management IP addressing configuration, we'll set a default gateway. IP default gateway 10.10.10.1. Now we have that configured. Next, we're going to configure the cryptographic keys and SSH. So we'll set an RSA key, crypto key generate RSA. We'll use a 1024-bit key. And we'll set SSH to version 2. IP SSH version 2. Now we have that configured. The next step was to configure the login credentials. So we'll define a user on the switch. Username netadmin with the password of let me in and an enable secret of level up. Finally, to complete the remote access, we need to configure the VTY lines to allow login via SSH. So we'll go into line VTY 0 through 4, login local. This will tell the switch to use the username that we just configured, and we'll define the transport input to be SSH only. So transport input SSH. Now we have that configured, we can return to the core switch and bring this interface up. Interface GI0/2. No shut. Give that a moment, wait for the interface to come up, and then we'll check CDP neighbors to ensure the core switch can in fact see the new user access switch. And there it is, user access 2. And the final step to this scenario was to then log into the management router in the network and confirm that it can in fact ping the new user access switch's management IP address. Okay, let's first try pinging it, 10.10.10.5. May need to wait for an ARP. There we go. And then finally, let's see if we can SSH using version 2 and the username netadmin to the IP address 10.10.10.5. Sorry, there should be a space in there. Okay, let me in and confirm we can elevate our privileges, enable the password level up. And there we are.